Welcome, folks, to the inaugural reinvent recap AWS Pug reboot. Did I get all that right, Christy? Was that everything?
Yeah, if you forget it, we can just replay it later.
Nice. So this evening we are going to go through, as I said, the AWS recap. This is the reInvent recap where we cover all of these services that AWS announced at the end of 2022 at the December reInvent in Vegas. A lot of the folks that were in Vegas are here with us this evening. We've got Jacquie, who is my favorite DevOps senior advocate ever. Wait, am I allowed to say that? I'm gonna get in trouble for saying that.
You recorded it. It's on the internet forever now.
It is on the internet forever. And we've got a couple of AWS heroes in the room. We've got Christy Peralt, Dave Stuffaker, Andrew Brown, and myself. So welcome, folks. This is open forum. If you have a question that you want to ask about a particular service, please feel free to. Now, bear in mind, there's been a lot of announcements. There were a lot of services. Jacquie has a lot to get through. So if you've got a question, feel free to ask. If you have 17 questions, let's wait till the end. We'll get to them as we go. Oh, hold on. If you haven't, feel free to, we are on Twitter at AWS Pug, and we also have a Slack. So if you go to awspug.slack.com, you can join us there and chat with us about upcoming announcements and community events that we're going to be doing. We're still working on the website. That's not up yet, so I'm not going to talk about that. And if you are in the audience and you have a company that would like to be a sponsor, please talk to us afterwards. We'd love to have a conversation with you. Again, this is a reboot of the user group. So all of the sponsors that we had 3 years ago, we haven't talked to in a while. So we're looking for sponsors again. And this is what we're going to be doing. I just said it. So it is now time to learn. Ms. Grindrod, are you ready to take the power over?
Yeah, sure.
All right, you have the power.
All right, let's go slideshow. We're going to hit play from start, and then we're going to do some screen sharing. And you're going to tell me if you can see it okay. And I'm going to confess that this is the first time I've ever used PowerPoint. So
is it really?
Yeah, in an actual presentation, this is the first time I've ever used PowerPoint.
We're gonna.
I've used like Google Slides and Keynotes. I mean, I practiced it at home like a couple times over the last week, but you know.
we can see your screen.
All right. Can somebody type something in chat for me? I just want to see if I'm able to see it or not. Oh, I can. It's over here. Good, good. There we go. Pop that up. That way I can see your questions if you want to type instead of talking. Totally fine. Very, very acceptable. All right, so I'll just get started then. We are here to do the inaugural reboot of the Portsmouth user group. Pug had to add the Pug in because it's super cute. reInvent recap, and that is a lot of re's. So I guess it's kind of before I get into that, who am I? Great question. I'm a senior developer advocate at AWS, and I was a DevOps engineer for about 5 years. I know that the title's like a little bit spicy. Some people are like, it's not a real title. We're not going to get into that tonight, but that is my background. I did work with a variety of companies, actually. I focused mostly in fintech, tabletop media streaming, and digital healthcare. And I'm from Vancouver, British Columbia. So all of those were extra fun because we had a lot of interesting things to work around, like data residency and making sure that we didn't upload maybe, patient data or financial records to an American location for something like S3. Great times. And yeah, as a developer advocate, I've worked at 2 different companies that you might have heard of before, HashiCorp and AWS. I've spoken at tons of conferences. This is basically just me being like, hey, who am I? Why do you care about what I have to say? And I've been like on the program committee, done some main stage emceeing, and you might recognize me from doing like live streams on the twitch.tv/AWS for Build On Weekly. I do usually do live streams, so I'm going to have this a little bit live streamy where if you put chat in, you've got a question, I'm going to keep an eye out for it and try to answer. This is fun though, because I'm looking over here because I can actually see you, and this is just such a nice like change. I'm like, oh my God, I can see people instead of just usernames. I love it. So love it.
Actual live human heads.
Yeah, like they're still on my camera or my screen, but like, and today I'm here to talk to you about reInvent. What else did I have in my notes here about me? Oh yeah, right. The important part. I mostly do infrastructure as code, pipelines, and orchestration stuff, general cloud stuff. So that's kind of my area of expertise if you want to ask me questions. And we'll come back to the whole streaming thing. And the final point I have on here is that when you don't see me either on stage or live streaming, I'm probably curled up somewhere with either a book or a video game, and it's probably fantasy or sci-fi. So let's talk a bit about reInvent. reInvent is a big conference that AWS puts in. This year, we had more than 2,000 technical sessions. We had more than 50,000 attendees, and we had more than 100 announcements. We're going to try and cover that 100 plus announcements. We're basically going to try and speed run the announcements. So my goal today is to try and get the announcements in front of you so that if there's something that you're like, oh, I didn't see that because there's a lot happening, or that's something cool that I want to explore, I just want to kind of surface that in front of you and give you that opportunity. And yeah, so it's a conference. It's hosted in Vegas. It's pretty big. Like they rent out multiple casinos and you're going like space to space to see all these different sessions. And there's different things happening everywhere. It's impossible to cover all of it. And my first and my last time going prior to last year was in 2016. So that's like me, DevOps engineer Jackie, putting a brick into the Lego wall. I thought this would be fun to include just to kind of show the changes. That was the last time I went until this year. So back then it was 32,000 attendees, and some of the major announcements we had actually were Lightsail, Athena, EC2 instances with GPU capabilities, code build, AWS Glue, and AWS step functions. It just kind of, I don't know, I was looking at this and I was like, wow, some of these are 6 years old. Like that's wild. So, and then coming into this year, 2022 was completely different. I went as a developer advocate, and I thought I was going to get a lot more time to just kind of like explore and check out the different booths or what people were doing, like announcements. I did not. That did not happen. I was on the live stream for 3 days straight. So 3 of the days out in that middle picture, you could see we had this cool pop-up studio in the hallway. People could walk by it. And we were doing basically live stream shows where people would come on and build something live with us and we'd talk about it. I was doing recorded videos. So you can see Emily and I recording a video by Deep Racer there. And then in the bottom left corner, I also helped facilitate, I was a, teacher assistant for 2 workshops that we did. So between the workshops, the video recording, and the live streaming, most people that tried to find me didn't actually get to see me, and I didn't really get to see a lot of events. So that was kind of like one of the biggest differences. It was really busy, really fun, but just really busy. So we didn't really get to watch like the key announcements and stuff like that, but we got to hear about them from people, which was really cool. So getting into the agenda, there's a lot here. Like I said, we're going to try and speed run these because my goal is to get it in front of you. If you want to discover something or you see something that looks cool and you want to look into it, that means I succeeded in my goal because you got to see it. So there's a lot, and we're just going to try to get through it here. So I'm going to start with builder experience, which is actually the section that has the announcements that I'm personally the most excited about. Just because like looking back on them, I was like, this would have been so cool when I was a DevOps engineer. Like I would have loved these. So the first one up is Application Composer, which is in preview. It's a brand new service. And the whole goal of it is basically to kind of like, it's really cool. Like you can drag and drop the services and it will give you the infrastructure as code. It'll output the actual code you can use. I was like, I've never tried to explain the file that comes out of that. But you get these drag and drop architecture diagrams and you get the code that actually makes it. And I remember spending all this time before basically just like you write this code and then you try to put in a diagram, and it was a huge time sink. So I kind of love this idea of being able to have them work together so that you can also put the code in and it will give you a diagram too. It goes both ways. So that's pretty awesome. I see Andrew in chat saying he loves it. Like I thought this was really cool. So it lets you, drag and drop. You can do grouping and connecting, and it's basically just visual. Coming over to here, this is what it actually looks like. So, you can see you've got this API gateway. You can see all of the different pieces of it and how that's kind of connecting over to compute. I really love this. Like I said that already, but I think it's cool. So the main goal of it is basically that, like when you first come into serverless or learning these services, it can feel like a lot. Like if you're trying to figure out, you just want to deploy a Lambda function with your code, you just want to run maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, the idea is basically if you came in to learn and you want to try and go through all these docs, it can be a lot to figure out how the pieces fit together. And this just gives you like another way to approach it. You can also use templates, like I said, drag and drop. I just think it's really awesome. And also a lot of these are already backed with AWS best practices if you're using some of the diagrams. Yeah, I like Andrew's example here. It's like training wheels for your serverless app. At some point you can take the wheels off because it generates really clean cloud formation. So that's something that like I would have loved probably at all stages of my career previous to being a DA, which is why I'm excited about it. Let's hit next. Yeah. There we go. So next one is Code Catalyst. The name kind of gives you an idea of what it's meant for. Like it's meant to basically give you this space that just really helps to propel you forward as you create things. And the way that it tries to do that is basically by taking all of these different things, like your source code, your issue management, your CI/CD, your reporting, and putting it into the same workspace. So it's currently in preview, and the goal of it is it's a cloud-based collaboration kind of area for you to write code in and work. And it allows you to have the same space for the work that you plan, to collaborate on your code, and also to build, test, and deploy. The coolest part about it is that it actually has blueprints. So similar to the last one where you've got best practices built in, we've got blueprints that you can basically browse from, and you can pick what you need based on like what language you're doing and what kind of setup you're going to have. And it's going to automatically provision and configure your project tools. So that includes issue trackers or your source repositories. It'll set up your CI/CD workflows. And you can also hook it in with either GitHub or Jira if those are things that you're using instead and you don't want to do the full shift over. That's a thing I like too. Yeah, it's currently available in preview in US West, Oregon, and you can use it to deploy to any of our accounts or regions. So it's pretty neat.
Yeah, that's something that I'm really excited to get my teeth sunk into. That's
I
going
know.
to be huge.
I just went to like an internal demo of it that I can't talk too much about, but it was really cool.
Awesome. Can't talk about it all, or can't talk about while the camera's rolling?
Unclear, probably both.
Okay, all right.
So Amazon Code Whisperer. I love this name. It's kind of funny, but I feel like it's a little more fun than some of the other names that we've seen. This is totally not in my script. Anyway. So the idea is that you've kind of seen some similar tools to this probably in the last little while. It takes your comments that you can write in like regular language that you speak in. Like I could be like, hey, create this thing for me. And then it will figure out basically using like an ML powered module, what kind of services it thinks are the best for you to use and in the code that you're using. So when you're writing code, it's a lot of things you need to figure out, keep up with, whether that's like programming languages, frameworks, software libraries, cloud services. There's a lot. So you write a comment such as function to upload image to S3, which we can see. Oh, my mouse is so far. Over here is the example. And then it kind of generates the code for you. So love that as a productivity tool. And the idea is that you can just kind of use that to get up and running and started. Like this whole category of tools are things I wished I had when I was a DevOps engineer, because like it would have taken so much just Googling or guesswork out of my regular flow. Yeah, I see ChatGPT in chat. Yes, not quite, but it works inside your IDE too. And the idea is that admins can allow for you to do SSO, like and have your single sign-on authentication. You can also integrate it with your other existing workforce identity solutions. And that lets you provide access to the users' groups and configure organization-wide settings. The other thing I thought was neat about this is like a lot of AWS services, you fully need like an account to use, which makes sense. This one you can actually use with your personal email and a builder ID and just get started. It looks like you don't need like the full organizational account. So that's pretty nice and accessible. And it supports Python, Java, JavaScript, C# and TypeScript. And it also works in Visual Code Studio, JetBrains, and AWS Cloud9. I also had a note here that it works with Lambda, so I don't really know fully what that looks like, but it does. So, all right. And that brings me to the end of the builder experiences section. I don't know if anyone has any questions there, but it seems like a reasonable point to pause before I jump into serverless.
We were actually having a conversation about the pivot that it feels like AWS has made back to it. It seems like the past couple of reinvents had been very container heavy,
Yeah.
this is a quote that developers hadn't been getting a lot of love in the past year and change. So seeing this was a huge change in that direction, and I'm very excited to get my teeth sunk into everything you just mentioned. Code Whisperer, especially Code Catalyst, though.
Oh, me too. Me too. I've been playing with them a little bit in the background. I've gone to some internal talks about it, and like I wasn't exaggerating. It was not in my script that like those are the three that I actually am the most excited about coming out of this reinvent. They're like my highlights that I can't wait to try them out. Probably gonna be trying it out on stream just because it's more fun that way. But
Right?
share my learning experience.
It's always better to learn live.
Not always, but sometimes. there are times when maybe it's not.
You missed the sarcasm in my voice.
Oh, I've actually enjoyed learning things live lately. It's been like a fun experience.
Nice.
But yeah, so that kind of brings us into the serverless section. You are right. It does feel like we've gone a lot heavier with serverless things than we have in the past. And as somebody who's mostly been in like the containers and orchestration space, I haven't really done a lot of serverless since 2016. So kind of coming back to it and just seeing like a lot has changed since 2016. I have a slide on that somewhere. Not since 2016 specifically, but some of the changes. Oh, wow, it's here. That worked out. So Lambda, it's got over 100 new features since 2014. And what I didn't mention in my 2016 slide was that actually one of the highlights from 2016 was that Lambda was only 2 years old. So that's like 100 new features in, oh my God, it's 2023, 9 years, but it's a lot. There's been a lot of changes. There's been a lot of updates. At the time for 2016, it was actually adding in Lambda at Edge and C# features. And when I compare those kind of features with the features that we're announcing now, like it's so much further ahead now. I think we have over 1 million active customers and over 10 million or 10 trillion requests per month, which, yeah, you can see my brain just going, what? That's such a high number. So kind of getting into Lambda snaps. I knew I couldn't say this word on stream. Didn't say it a single time right in any of my dry runs. Snap, start. There we go. I can't say that for my life. But anyway, the idea for this new service, new feature, is that it reduces cold starts by 90%. So yeah, we've got some things here. Basically, it reduces your cold starts. And we'll go into the next slide that talks a little bit more about what that is and why. So when you're getting started under the hood, the Lambda lifecycle has 3 different stages. So you've got the init stage, invoke stage, and shutdown stage. And one of the things that we've heard was that init was slow. It was a problem area. That's cold starts. It takes a little while to warm up your Lambda before it gets going. So this feature is intended to basically help with that. Reduce your cold start time. Yeah, so I'm like skimming the notes to be like, have I missed an important part of this? Yeah, it says it can make them 10 times faster, which is pretty cool, and it doesn't cost anything extra. So I think that's like a really nice gain here. Like I said, some of these we're going to be discovering or at least diving into together here. So can't do all 100 features on my own single-handedly. So let's talk about Event Bridge. They've added in pipes, and the main goal of this is to remove the need to write undifferentiated glue code. Got an example here of how that kind of pipeline works, and it can include filtering and enrichment as needed. Yeah, I haven't actually had a chance to use this at all, so this seems cool, but I won't know until I get to try it more.
Christy, have you already played with this?
Oh yeah, that's a good question.
I have not yet. I know for our company, the Snap Start one is the one that folks are most excited about because we are 110 years old and Java is a big deal. So folks are very excited about the decreased the cold start times. But some of these I've heard about, haven't had a chance to play with yet.
This is fun. I'm like, wait, I can ask people in the room. I love this.
Yeah, you totally
It's very
can.
collaborative. I like it.
feel free. This is an organic user group. We all lean on each other, as a community should, to learn together.
Yeah,
That's how that sounded. That sounded pretty good, didn't it?
it does actually. And that's so the thing I didn't talk about in 2016 was that was actually my first conference I ever went to, and it was one of my first exposures to community. And it was really big for me because, like, I mean, arguably it's how I ended up here. But you know, it was just learning that there was a community of people that were solving problems that were the same problems I was working on, and I didn't have to go through all of it alone because I was the only ops engineer for a long part of my career, or one of two or one of three for like 400 developers. And it just felt very like, oh my God, what am I doing? How am I going to solve these problems? And just learning there was communities of people that you could talk to or lean on was like eye-opening for me. Like it was literally game-changing. So it's just my happy, warm feels about community. I did see that Roger put a question in chat that I really liked. So we were talking about the DevOps tools here. I think it's specifically Code Whisperer. He said, agree on the innovation, but now anyone can say that they can code or do DevOps, but do they really? I think like whenever we're talking about tools like this that help generate code for you, and a really important thing to note is that like, don't just push it to prod without understanding what it is and how it works. And as far as like, do they really understand DevOps? I think that that's kind of like that difference between I've generated this code and I pushed it out, and I've generated this code and it's, you know, it's my productivity helper. Like it's helped me to not write some of the more mundane pieces. And now I can focus more on like the more complex problems that I'm going to be working on and just kind of hop off of this. I know it's like a huge that's just my take. Like I know it's a huge hot topic that people have a lot of opinions on. So definitely not saying mine is like the end all be all, but yeah.
No, I think you're right though, because you can use Code Whisperer to say like, make me a function that takes 2 inputs and does something to it. But you can't say, write me a program that will make my company more money. I mean, it's that there's such a huge difference between having assistance on like a tactical get something done so that I don't have to Google it versus like an overarching systems architecture piece to it.
I'm making this face because I'd mentioned I've been writing blog posts and blog posts and blog posts, and they're all about DevOps, and just like such a big part of working in that space too is the culture and the understanding of the different teams and how you work together and collaborate. And this is just something that can like assist your productivity there.
Yeah.
I was in the middle of replying to that too, because we've been on like main stages talking about the same thing at Liberty Mutual. Like we've had our own internal version of Code Catalyst for several years now. So we've been using these blueprints, and it does completely free you up to focus more on business code and logic. And like our claim to fame is we can have an intern deploying production ready code within like 10 minutes. Now the flip side of that is that do they know what they've deployed? And like, you know, there's education gaps and things like that too. So it's definitely not a perfect solution, but I agree with everything everybody else has said. As somebody who's lived it and who's done enablement for folks in this space, it's definitely helps with innovation. It makes things faster. It gives you a good starting point, but it's not without its flaws.
So when you say we can have an intern deploying to prod in 10 minutes, is the next part, do we want to have an intern deploying to prod in 10 minutes?
That is. Yeah, it's completely.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's very cookie cutter, right? Out of the box, like hello world Lambda function is what I mean by that. They're probably not going to have anything super sophisticated in that amount of time, but.
Right.
Seems like a good point to pause and assess. There's still a lot of slides. So I've been trying to kind of read a little bit of like what they are and what they do. But if we'd prefer, I can instead treat it like a bullet list and just kind of go through the sections and be like, here's, you know, each of these slides, but here's just the highlights, and not go through as many notes so there's more time for discussion.
Yeah, I mean, this is a user group. So if somebody's got a question about a particular thing, I mean, feel free to accelerate the pace a little bit. And I mean, that way people that have questions can get the questions answered. People that aren't as interested in a thing, we can not gloss over, but, you know, I always think about
I was thinking gloss over,
teams.
but
yeah. Well, I was thinking about the service teams, and I never want them to feel bad. Like, yeah, we're going to skip.
Yeah. Oh, I don't mean like literally skip them. I just don't think I want to. I think for me as a speaker too, I'd rather I like this discussion side of it. I'm enjoying it a lot. So I'm like, if I can make a little more space for that.
Let's do it. Totally.
All right. I'll try and just do like the name and like a one-liner to the best of my ability on what it is. So Yeah, we're in serverless, so where I haven't really worked as much of this, so we're going to do our best. So the next one I've got is distributed maps for AWS step functions and more concurrency up to 10,000 executions in parallel, which like that sounds really cool to me. That's a lot of being able to scale and just kind of being able to process data on any service API that's supported by them. Let's see. It also allows you to iterate over lots of objects, so not just data, but also like logs, images, and CSV files that might be in S3, which is pretty cool. And let's see here. Yes, okay. That's the main points. So I'll just keep going. And I don't want any of the service teams to feel like I'm not interested. There's just so many. Like I am interested. I just can't deep dive into all of them at once. So AppFlow's got a big slide here because they're now supporting over 50 applications. You can see we've got highlights for what they've released. We've got some new marketing connectors as well as new customer service and engagement connectors. And here's some other kind of, how do I categorize that? Microsoft Teams, Zooms, GitHub, GitLab, Circle CI, just other things that they also work with. They've added in a point and click UI, which I already said this with like App Composer too. I think it's really cool to be able to have this visual side of it for people that might not only learn from the docs. And you can also build the connectors using an SDK. So that's nice to kind of just have it right in there and integrated. Which brings us to the DevOps category. All right, so we've got ECS Service Connect. I think this is neat because basically it's like in-house built-in service mesh service connections. So you can do this connect from service to service and do service discovery and observability, which I don't think ECS had this capability before. It was something that you had to bootstrap yourself with something like Console or Envoy. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't used ECS in a long time, but I think it's pretty neat to just have that inside because it gets, it gets rid of a lot of that extra complexity that you need if you wanted to just be able to go service to service. We've got RDS now has blue-green deployments, which is awesome for Amazon Aurora. I just need to process that. I was like, wow, being able to do that with databases would be really cool. And like I've wasted, well, not wasted, I have sunk lots of hours in my previous career and just trying to move data from here to here, make sure that you're not messing up the versions, not crashing your application. So that's nice. And you can promote the staging environment to production environment. That's also really cool. This brings us into AWS Elastic Disaster Recovery Automated Failbacks. Lets you fail over to original regions. We've got more backup features. So we've got S3 backup. We've got support for VMware workloads. You can protect and restore your CloudFormation stacks. That's really nice. Support for Amazon Redshift. And you can delegate organization-wide backup. That's cool. That's really cool. So we've also got some CloudWatch changes where you've got this internet monitor, which gives you visibility into any internet issues you might be running into. We've got CloudWatch logs data protection. So that's nice, gives you the ability to leverage pattern matching and machine learning so you can detect and protect sensitive log data in transit. As I said, fintech, healthcare background, I love that. That's awesome. And we've got S3 multi-region access point failover controls. Is there anything else I should share about this one? I think that's the main thing. It lets you do S3 data access request traffic routed through multi-regions. So let's see. Zonal shift. So we've got new capability that's built into ELBs and it allows a better end user experience for highly resilient multi-AZ applications. And it gives you recovery-oriented strategy. I like that we've got this diagram that kind of shows us what we're talking about here. And I really like the ability to shift from one AZ to another one that's healthy. I used to work in Toronto, so this US East one was sometimes not the most reliable. So I think being able to just shift out would be really nice. And it's nice to see features like this getting added in. That brings us to AI/ML, which is a lot of SageMaker updates. There was a lot of changes in this space, and some of it was around having more built-in data preparation for studio notebooks. And this is supposed to help you by simplifying the data preparation required for it so that you can kind of just get up and running faster. We've got more fixes to notebooks. Well, not fixes, but upgrades to notebooks. So you can now have a shared space and actually work together. I've used this actually. It was cool. We could work on the notebooks together as we were building things out. And it was nice compared to like the previous workflow where we were sharing the code back and forth to try and get it running. It was just nice to be able to work in it together. I think that's definitely a theme we've seen over the reInvent announcements too. Whether you're talking about Code Catalyst, in the past we've had Cloud9, just ways of being able to work and collaborate in the same space together. And you can also automate a notebook as a job that runs in production environments. That seems cool. That seems a little bit to me into the space of like kind of orchestration and being able to make sure things are running how you expect them and want them to run. And I haven't seen that yet with SageMaker or other kind of ML tools. So I think that's pretty neat. We've got geospatial ML with Amazon SageMaker, which also is something that's been announced. All of this has been announced. I don't need to keep repeating that, but it was all announced at reInvent. So, and then we've got, basically you can get geospatial data with built-in operations and transformations. We've got Data Wrangler. This allows you to prepare your data for machine learning. Really not in my wheelhouse right now. So I'm hoping that if you've worked with SageMaker, this is something where you can see how it would fit into your workflow and how you might be able to leverage it, which would be cool. Data Wrangler also has real-time and batch inference. That's neat. Also, if you see any of these and you want to see more information about it, I do have the links to like all of the actual announcements and documentation for it. If you see something, you're like, hey, that was cool. I want to deep dive into that. Let me know. I'll share it. Oh, there was definitely more conversation that I didn't see. That's okay. Sorry.
Roger's excited about AI/ML.
Oh yeah, I'm excited about it too, but I'm like enthusiastic from a distance. Like I'm like, I haven't really gotten to do much with this. It's really cool, but I don't know how to implement it. Like I've done a couple like AI/ML workshops and like I've done pretty well in them, but that's not the same as like, you know, working in a job or deeply understanding. So we've got some more governance tools. There's actually quite a few of governance announcements as well at reInvent. I've seen a lot of like GovCloud stuff that was announced too, especially around new, I'll get back to it, but especially around like new instances that have been released. For SageMaker, we've also got Role Manager now. So you can do your permissions for SageMaker in minutes, which is also really nice. That took us a little while to do before this was a feature that was released. And yeah, endpoints and jump starts. That sounds cool. This is definitely the hardest section for me to go through. So
I like that you're learning along with us. You're like, oh,
yeah.
this is cool.
That's very much so going to be the goal of today is like, it's getting it in front of me. It's getting it in front of you. Like,
oh, that sounds neat. Yeah.
I'm not going to position myself. Yeah. I was like, I'm not going to position myself as an expert that knows all of these deeply because I don't. Yeah. Andrew, reInvent was a haze. There was a lot. It was a lot. Like I could have filled a whole hour just with like the things we did there and the things that happened. Like Datadog had this giant slide that I went down and I thought I was going to get launched into space because it was really fast. Like, there's so many different spaces. Yeah. All right. Intelligent document processing. This sounds pretty cool too. It looks neat that you can put PDFs in Microsoft Words and image Microsoft Words. My brain's just like giving up on me live here. I know words. Cool. It allows you to classify. Yeah, they are. They're great. They're complicated. You put them together and they mean different things.
I highlighted this one for our internal company recap because this one seemed pretty cool for insurance because we're dealing with documents like all the time. And I actually think that this might have been like a hackathon project that someone did like a couple of years ago at our company. So it's cool that it's like built in now as support because we definitely scan in a lot of documents and save stuff.
Documents are hard. Like we had entire products in healthcare around just how to format it right, because if it got sent the wrong way to the hospital, they couldn't, like if it was a prescription or anything, like they couldn't do anything with it if it wasn't exactly formatted. Like they're hard to figure out. And I didn't realize a lot of tools around that use like pixel by pixel comparison to make sure that every single thing is in the right spot.
Yep. Yeah.
I
And
built
the
pipelines for
legalities
that. It
are
was
like
crazy.
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This one sounds neat. Like it allows you to classify and extract entities from PDFs, Microsoft Word files, and images. And then you don't need to pull out the text yourself, which is really big. Like it's hard. Like you copy paste it out, you change it. Like it's not a very friendly process historically. So I think this is a pretty cool tool to kind of see coming out. And I like that you have that use case and you've already worked with it. So Kendra gives us intelligent enterprise search, which seems interesting. Oh, it's got different language support, which is great too. So the examples it's giving for like when this is going to be helpful for you is if you're doing something like searching for what the APR on a business credit card or what's the credit card with the lowest annual fees, which are all things that I'm horrible at figuring out actually. So this sounds really cool to me personally, but it's for enterprises. So that seems like a really neat space. All right. So we've got service cards provide information on services as responsible AI. And I'm going to have to deep dive into this later, actually, because this looks really cool. I love the idea of having this way of learning. And also, I think having like responsibility and ethics in AI is really important. And it's definitely a discussion that's been coming up a lot lately, whether it's around, tools that help to write your code or tools that generate images of people in certain art styles. It's nice to kind of see this conversation happening and having these cards to look at. So I'll have to look at that later. That brings us out of this section into data and analytics. I don't know if we want to pause. No, keep going, keep
good.
rolling. All right. This is one of the hardest talks I've ever given. I really didn't think this was going to be as hard as it is.
What are you talking about? This is the friendliest audience ever.
No, not the
You're gonna
audience.
hate PowerPoint.
The content. It's just a lot. And I'm like, I usually talk about things where I'm like, I know this inside out. So coming in and being like, there's a lot here. Like, I know that's why I'm giving this talk is because it is a lot to process and it is a lot to look up. But it's hard to try and run through it and be like, how do you feel? Like health check. How we doing? We live? Are we alive? So that was a really bad joke. Anyway.
I'm not dead yet.
Yeah.
I feel happy.
So that brings us into the data and analytics area. So we've got Amazon Data Zone, which unlocks data across organizational boundaries with built-in governance. That's a lot to take in, but it looks like it's going to be really helpful. It was announced by Adam to help catalog and share data across your organization. And I know in the past, data is just an area I've struggled with a lot personally in my career. So it's neat to see tools that can support people and kind of either lift and shift it over or promote it or do these deployments or just generally have governments around it too. I have a whole side story, but I won't get into it today. I'll save it for another time. But AWS Clean Rooms, which is collaborate without sharing raw data. Again, my background in fintech healthcare saw this announcement and was like, yes, this is very exciting. So the problem it's trying to solve is basically whatever your industry, whether it's like financial services, healthcare. It's literally in the slide, that one, in advertising. You don't want to like give away raw data, basically. Like you want to make sure it's clean, it's scrubbed, and that you're not doing anything that like shouldn't be there. Like you don't want to list like patient names or, home records, any kind of like PI that you don't want. So the idea here was, how do you kind of match, analyze, and collaborate on your data that's on AWS with maybe partners, so possibly other brands or publishers or agencies that also use AWS, but you don't want to move, share, or reveal the raw data. So that's what this is going to help with. You can tell I'm excited because I said a lot more words about it, and I think it's cool, and I understand how it fits. So that's really neat. Will it stop transfer of data from non-compliant regions? That is a great question. I don't actually see anything in the notes of that, and I think that's because it's currently in preview. So it's got a limited list of regions that it's actually going to roll out in. That's like US East, Ohio, North Virginia, Oregon, Asia, Sydney, Tokyo, Frankfurt, Ireland, London, and Stockholm. So it's not like the full list of places yet. So I'm not really sure on that one, but I also only have internal links, so I can find an external link for this one after. For OpenSearch serverless, we've got real-time search, monitoring, and analysis of business and operational data. There's been a lot. It's probably because I was at Observability Day, but I've heard a lot of talk about OpenSearch, and just kind of seeing this continue to get iterated on and have new features coming out is really neat. Yeah, the goal here is to decouple compute storage and separate your ingesting components from the search query components. Let's see. Yeah, I've got, if like I've seen a lot of talk about this online. I've seen it in person. So here's a direct link if you want to like dive into this one more. And I should come back and do some other links for the other ones too. If there's one you want a link for, just put it in chat. I'll come back and I'll drop that there too, actually. So AWS Glue, lots of updates here. We've got 4.0 and it has the latest Spark and Python releases, which sounds great. We've got some data quality rule recommendations. I personally, anytime that there's any kind of best practice, either recommendations or things to support, guardrails, things like that, I think that's great to have because, you know, not everyone's going to be an expert in everything, even if they're implementing it. And just having things that make it easier to do it right is fantastic. We've got Glue for Apache Spark and Ray, and we've also got custom visual transform.
I love seeing more support for Python. There's a lot of love to the Python developers this past reInvent, I noticed, with a lot of the announcements, and I'm a big Python fan, so.
Yeah, there's been, my brain's just like, there was a lot of announcements, but there was a lot with Python too. I saw a lot of Rust as well, actually.
Yeah, I had noticed the Glue ones too, because we work with some of the Glue stuff, so speed is big there.
Yeah. So we've got Athena and Apache Spark. I'm checking time, I'm checking slides. I'm going to try and go back to doing some quicker updates here. We've got some Redshift updates. So there's more Spark integration. We've got streaming ingestion support. We've got auto copying from Amazon S3, dynamic data masking, and multi-AZ deployments. Again, availability zone. I keep saying AZ like I don't know what it stands for, but it's availability zone. Very helpful. So these are some features that have come out with Redshift. Aurora's added zero ETL integration. I was going to make a joke and I realized I shouldn't anyway. So it helps you to drive holistic insights across applications or partitions. And then we've got what?
Were you about to make an inappropriate joke?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't inappropriate. I was just like, oh, I don't know. I don't know that area enough to know if it's a punching down joke, so I'm not going to make it.
Okay,
fair enough. I don't know who the target would be. So I was like, it sounds like it might potentially be unkind, and I don't want to be unkind, even if it's actually not unkind.
Like, even accidental unkindness is beyond you, Jackie.
Yeah, no, I don't want to. We're just getting my full thought stream here, but anyway. So they've got AWS Lake Formation, data sharing access control. So centrally manage your granular access to data across all consuming data services. That looks helpful. We've got Amazon QuickSight updates, which helps you to forecast your data. This is, all right. We're going to keep moving. Again, there's still so many slides. Amazon RDS optimized reads and writes, which has been announced. This is general availability. Oh yeah, I didn't cover this, but the GA on the bottom means it's generally available, and this preview here means it's in preview. So it might be in a limited set of, I just almost said realms. It's in a limited set of realms.
Shards, Elder Scrolls
Too much
Online
fantasy.
areas.
Yeah. Where was I? I went back to show that one. Just watching me panic click. It's fine. All right, next slide. Here we go.
There you go.
So Amazon RDS now has optimized read and writes, which is great. We've got Amazon Kinesis Firehose OpenSearch integration. I love that idea. I talked about OpenSearch, and I just think it's really great to have these other ways of kind of finding this data and being able to look for it. And anytime there's integrations, it's nice to see teams working together and basically bringing some of these features to other services. So we've got Amazon Document DB Elastic Cluster, It's got MongoDB capability. So it's been announced as a scalable, highly durable, and fully managed database service for operating your JSON workloads. We've got trusted language extensions for PostgreSQL. Okay, again, I love it when we work with open source communities as well. Whenever we have extra development kits or ways that we work with them, it's nice to kind of like the Amazon, I remember in 2016 was very, very heavily like hooked into AWS. If you wanted to use other things, it was a bit of a lift. It's a lot of work. And I think in the last 6 years, since I've been using it, there's been this huge shift into just being able to work more with other services. And it's really nice to see that. In this case, it's an OSS development kit for PostgreSQL wording extensions. So we've got AWS Data Exchange for lake formation and S3. So you've now got direct access to the data provider's S3 buckets or lake formations catalog. And you don't need to create S3 or other storage locations to copy and update data. So that helps reduce your costs. That is great. So that brings us into commute. We're doing good. Compute. There was a ton of compute images announced and like new flavors of compute. By a ton, I mean at least 10 this year. And most of them focused on basically having higher packets per second support, reducing your latency, reducing power consumption, or having like higher networking bandwidth. Or there's also images for machine learning performance that we've rolled out this year in EC2. I'm going to copy paste the name of the instances that we've rolled out, because if I try to say this all back to back, it's not going to work. So these are all the ones that we've rolled out. There's a lot of changes. We're continuing to make new instances to support the workloads that you have. And I think that's really great to see. Let's see. Oh, it did skip all of my slides. That's good. So we've also rolled out a Microsoft Office AMI. So it's already fully compliant and just ready to go, which I think is really nice too. We've got Compute Optimizer external metrics support. Again, I think this is just kind of getting into that space of where you can see the more you see what's happening and the more you can learn from it, the better you're going to be positioned to be able to know what's happening and how you need to fix it. So that's great to see. AWS Nitro also has enclaves. How do you even? I think it's enclaves, but it's also got EKS and Kubernetes support. So you can now control that from either Kubernetes pods in, EKS or Kubernetes. Let's see. Next up, we've got EC2 torn write prevention. So it's a feature to make sure that your writes to storage are transactional and presents the creation of halfway states. Anytime I think of something like this, you think of when you get stuck in a state and you try to roll back, but you can't roll back and you can't roll forward, and it's just not a great position to be in. So kind of I don't know if that's fully what this is solving, but that's what I think from looking at it. We're in that realm of things we're learning together here. And that kind of gets us to storage, which is a much shorter section, actually. So we've got some Amazon EFS updates. I know, right? I'm trying. There's still 30 slides. So I'm just like,
and
going.
Dave dropped right when we got to storage. What the heck?
I know.
Our one AWS storage hero leaves the room.
Yeah. So we've got EFS updates. So we got elastic throughput. We've got some new lifecycle policies, which is great. We've got performance improvements. Everyone loves performance improvements. So that's definitely like a nice feature to be putting out. We've got EVS IO2 SRD support. So saying that your write latency is improved by up to 90%. This sounds good. I'm going to be honest. I don't know what this is, but it sounds good. We've got Amazon FSX for OpenZFS updates. I know what that is. That's good. So gives you up to 10 gigabytes of throughput and up to 350,000 IOPS, which is fantastic. And it's also got a high-speed NVMe cache. So these all sound like really nice kind of storage improvements to be working with. And we've also got it for NetApp on tap updates. So you get throughput improvement as well as easier to access multi-availability zone file systems. And that brings us to networking, which is, we're just going to try and go through this because I think this has a lot of So there's a lot of slides that kind of build on each other. So I've got VPC Lattice, which is newly announced and it's in preview. And the goal of it is to simplify the way that developers connect, secure, and observe communication with application layer networking between services. So that's the main goal. We talk a little bit about connectivity, consistency across different services, which is, again, great that we're seeing these different services work together in the same way. And also there's some security that's been added in. So the goals here are to increase developer productivity, have better security posture, optimize your compute choice. And they just want to reduce your costs and improve scale and resilience, which is like a lot of things most teams are trying to check off. So that sounds very helpful. And I think we just covered those points, but this is kind of a more detailed. So we'll just keep going on that one. We've also got AWS verified access, which is currently in preview. And so the idea here is that traditionally, if you had remote access to applications, it'd be going through a VPN. And once you've authenticated, you have to go through a broad range of different policies in siloed systems. And the goal here is to just kind of give you that secure network access without a VPN. So that's the main goal, is just to take away this kind of middle step, and then you can connect there. So it talks about how it's going to enhance your security posture, improve your end user experience, and simplify operations. That's why you might want to check this one out. It also gives you centralized logs. That's nice. Sounds sarcastic, but it's actually really nice. It's not fun to go search through a ton of different log buckets to find what you need. It's very hard. Well, time consuming. So we've got some load balancing and enhancements, which is also fantastic. So we've got that zonal shift we talked about earlier. We're looking for minimum healthy targets. You can configure different health check responses, and you can specify different response codes. All of this sounds very helpful. And then we've got networking enhancements. So VPC reachability analyzer supports cross-account traces. And if you're using AWS Network Manager, it's introducing real-time performance monitoring for AWS Global Network. So we've got the Elastic Network Adapter Express has also been announced. And it's meant to enable the benefits for scalable, reliable diagrams. This one has a lot of resources. So that's pretty cool because there's a lot of like demos and things to see for what's out there with it. And that brings us to security and compliance. So we've added, this is also preview, Amazon verified permissions. So if you want to build applications faster with this, govern your fine-grained permissions. I've seen a lot here about like granular permissions being a highlight in a lot of these service announcements. So I think that's pretty nice too, to kind of see this smaller, more fine-grained control that's coming through. Seems to be a theme. We've got Amazon Security Lake, which allows you to automatically centralize your data security. And we've also got AWS Config Proactive Compliance. Proactive compliance is great. You don't want to check your compliance after you've already had an incident. So personally, I think that's always a good thing to look into. Having never been through an incident myself, ever, never. It's a lie. Yeah, just want to proactively check your compliance for your config rules and make sure that it's actually going to work before you provision your resources the way you expect it to. We've got AWS Control Tower, which is comprehensive control management. And this feature is also in preview because it's new. And it just is meant to reduce the time to vet AWS services from either months down to weeks and help you to just kind of go into that and figure out the service, control objective, or compliance framework. Basically build things more secure, more faster. So we got AWS organizations, which allows you to delegate your administrative accounts. I cannot tell you how many weeks of my life between AWS and other clouds I have spent on a whiteboard, just like writing how orgs should connect to each other, how they should break down. And just, I think anything that is supporting in that area is something that I personally would have been like interested in checking out and learning more about. But yeah, just it's intended to allow you to have more more individual policies. Again, just kind of getting into that granular, more control, more control is the word I want. But yeah. All right, so we've got Amazon Macy automated data discovery. And the goal of this one is continual visibility into where your sensitive data resides. This is also in GA, and it's supposed to help you discover and protect your sensitive data at scale. We've got Control Tower. account factory customization. We're still slides, so I'm just going to keep trying to speed up a little bit more here. We've got AWS CloudTrail, Lake, AWS config integration. And that now imports configuration items from AWS config. So we've seen a lot of updates around that too, actually. So it's nice to see more features coming out. Amazon Inspector for Lambda functions, automated continual vulnerability management at scale. I want to play with this, actually. This looks cool. Just kind of the idea to quickly like look into your Lambda functions for software vulnerabilities. This is something I remember building pipelines around. It's trying to make sure that you could do it. And it took a lot of thought and effort to build them and check it. So anything that kind of takes that lift off of the people building the pipelines and makes it easier to do, I think is great. We've got KMS, external key store. That's an announcement. It's in general availability. Oh, there's more slides. Okay. So it extends existing KMS custom key store beyond just the cloud HSM and gives it to on-prem as well. We've got guard duty, RDS protection. There was actually a workshop that Brandon Carroll did for this at both Reinforce and reInvent that was really good, that talked about, you know, if somebody's trying to take over your Lambda or your services and maybe, you know, maybe they want to run a Bitcoin miner on it, how do you automatically detect that threat and then also fix it? So it's nice to kind of see more on guard duty. And that brings us to other. We are in the home stretch. Yay. So we've got Amazon Omics, which store, query, analyze, and generate insights. We've got AWS Wicker. This doesn't look like Chime at all. We might need to cut that out of the recording. It's single product. Yeah, it's like we probably don't actually have to. I'm mostly joking, but it's a single product with the full suite of collaboration capabilities. So this looks a lot like the tool that we're currently using for this. For this call, I just lost my balance and almost fell over. So we've got AWS IoT core updates. So we've got, you know, you can obtain your device location without GPS, some message headers for faster message processing and scheduling jobs. We've got SimSpace Weaver, which is a fully managed compute service to help deploy large-scale spatial simulations. This looks cool because this looks like it's for gaming, which makes me want to try it even more because it works with Unity, Unreal Engine 5, and any other like custom simulation engine you might be using. So we have AWS Supply Chain, which is supposed to help increase supply chain resilience. We've got some marketplace announcements. We've got more vendor insights coming out. There's more support for direct deployment to EKS clusters, and you've got more third-party data to integrate with your data mesh. I know. So we've got the Amazon Bracket algorithm library. So more Python implementations for well-known algorithms. I wish this had existed when I was a student because it would have been really cool to see how different things had been implemented and learn from that. We've got Amazon Connect forecasting, capacity planning, and scheduling. So that's machine learning powered contact center capabilities. I don't fully, let's see, I'm diving into the notes here. So it allows you to respond faster to capacity and workforce changes. Okay, so that's kind of for managing workforces. We've got Amazon Connect agent workspace guides. Is that workforce one you want the link for?
I'll get it to him.
Okay, that works.
Roger's an old buddy of mine. I've got the deck and everything. So.
Oh, perfect. Well, you have a slightly different deck, but.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah, slightly. I've modified a lot. It doesn't seem like it, but I have. All right, so we've got Amazon Connect Contact Lens Chat support. Oh, we were talking about this. This is cool because it also kind of gives you this idea, like you can see it in the graph, but it gives you this idea of what the sentiment was around the conversation, which I think is really fascinating. Just being able to kind of pull that out. We've got Game Lift Anywhere, so it provides session management for multiplayer games. Very hard problem to solve, actually. I tried to build one once. Very difficult, very difficult outside of my skill. And one of the goals we have is for 2025, we want to go 100% renewable energy, which is huge. That's a really big change. And it's a really good goal to have. And we also want to be water positive by 2030. So those were two of the major sustainability announcements that were made at reInvent. And finally, if you want to stay in touch or connect with the AWS community, we've got Dev Center, where you can come look at the different events. I believe there's also like, yeah, well, you can come look at the events. I don't think I can say what I was about to say, so I'm not going to, but you can check it out if you want to see what's happening and learn more about what it is and where to go to. We've got AWS Developers Handle on Twitter, which talks a lot about the things that we're releasing, whether it's video on demand content, maybe it's live tweeting things like Build On Weekly. It's kind of like your area to get in touch with us if you want to hear about things, you want to submit feedback to us, maybe you want us to talk about something on the show. It's a great place to reach out to us. Hey, that's us. So it's YouTube, but we've got Build on AWS, the YouTube channel. We've got a couple Build On brand things you'll notice, and the main goal of Build On is that we want it to be builder friendly. So we want all of the things that go, either all the content, whether it's recorded videos, it's shorts, it's live streams. It's how do you actually build this thing and do it live, basically. Like we do it together so you can walk through it. And sometimes it means we make mistakes or things don't work and you learn live with us. I should transition into oh, that was Twitch. That's the next one. Yeah, Twitch. I co-host the show. It's great. It's a lot of fun. And we have you come in and just kind of talk to us as we're doing it and, you know, try to build stuff with us. And then the polished videos go on YouTube. I saw the preview and I was like, oh, it's YouTube first. So YouTube is where we have the shorts and we have the polished videos. It's where you can find like past live streams. It's also where you can find, we did this whole reInvent track and you can find all those videos here too. And we made it.
Nice.
So it's over 100 announcements in more time than I wanted it to take, but I tried. So
that was just a little, like a couple minutes over an hour. Okay, so what
Yeah.
we're going to do is we're actually going to stop the recording now and then take questions afterwards, so that we're not having a 17-hour long recording for YouTube. So
that sounds
Jacquie,
good.
thank you very much for coming on and doing the reInvent recap, pug reboot, reinauguration with us.
Thank you for having me.